bewildering alien powers, more romantic angst than you can stuff into a Jeep, and, well, a fairly moderate amount of Tabasco sauce, all things considered. This week, we're looking back at all 22 episodes of the first season of Roswell. I'm Chris.
I'm Claire, and this is Illegal Aliens, a Roswell podcast.
Right, and since it's a season wrap-up, we are going into uncharted territory and going out of our comfortable groove. And I did have this idea of the icebreaker game of snap reactions to the 22 episode titles. And I envisaged this working with one person rhyming off the titles and the other person giving, like, one scene or moment that popped into their head and then switching. So do you want to be naming first or actually answering first?
I don't mind. Do you want to start as it was your idea?
I can start with answering, yeah.
Okay. Suppose we begin with the pilot.
Yes, the wooden aliens crashing down and burning.
Always good. If you're a human. The monsters after, the morning after.
Nobody wanted peanut clusters.
I think we're going to have a lot of overlap here. Monsters.
Okay. Maria lying like a rug.
Definitely. Leaving normal.
The vision of Grandma Claudia at the foot of the bed.
Missing.
That moment where Michael realizes he forgot about the journal too long.
Yeah. 285 South?
You're kidnapping me. No, wait, you're abducting me.
There is that. River Dog.
Liz saying, I didn't come for permission, I just wanted the necklace.
That was a very good Liz moment. Also, she wasn't standing in the corner.
Yes.
Blood Brother.
Liz going to Alex and asking for his help.
Heatwave.
Liz telling Alex the truth. And jail cells.
The Balance.
Liz having to stand in the corner.
Yes, there is that slightly. Toy House?
Mrs. Evans is like the sun.
Yeah, that's lovely. Into the Woods.
Alex and his dad showing up without sleeping bags.
Yeah, they've definitely done camping before, those two. The Convention?
Hubble quizzing Max on dates and Max just not getting it at first.
I am nodding here from a distance for listeners at home. Blind Date?
Max sneaking off at the end to see the heart on the balcony.
Yeah. Independence Day?
Michael cooking breakfast.
Do you know, I'd forgotten that. Sexual Healing. It's next.
Oh, so much of the eraser room.
There really, really is. Okay, that brings us to Crazy.
Mrs. Topolsky sliding into the booth across from Liz.
Teslas and Videotape.
The frickin' kiss in the rain.
Foursquare.
Max shaking himself and realizing that it's daytime.
Max to the Max.
Michael hugging Liz.
Yeah. The White Room.
Valenti charging up and shooting Pierce.
And Destiny.
Them seeing the mom for the first time.
Yes, that's a standout moment for sure.
All right. So, your turn.
Okay.
The pilot.
The Crashdown shooting.
Right? The morning after.
Alex's line about, you keep mentioning Czechoslovakia, which hasn't existed in years.
Yes. Monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Maria's line to Valenti about, they deserve your protection.
Yes, yes. Very prescient there. Leaving normal.
I think Claudia's arrival at the crashdown, actually.
Nice. Yeah, she makes a good entrance. Missing.
Michael returning the journal, I think.
Yes. 285 South.
Ulysses. Michael quoting Ulysses.
Yes.
Not forgetting the sugar canisters.
Well, actually, I think the sugar canisters might have been in Riverdog.
Ah, well, in that case, that's probably what I'm remembering from Riverdog.
Okay, then.
That's our fault for running them together.
It is. We're never doing that again, I think.
Definitely not.
Blood brother.
Stuff definitely happened this episode. The reveal about the FBI on Topolsky's computer.
Yes. Heatwave.
Heatwave. I swear stuff also happened in Heatwave. I think it's the Jim and Amy scene, where we get a bit of their backstory.
Oh. Yes. I
had to pick someone to arrest, and you were...
Yes.
The balance. The introduction of the Stones, I think.
Yes. Toy House?
Max and Diane talking in the park.
Oh, yeah. Into the Woods?
Alex and Isabel stargazing.
Oh, yes.
I thought you were going to go for that one, actually.
The convention.
I really, really like the quiet subplot that's happening, where all the women are airing their latest grievances. Can that be a thing?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. Blind date.
I think this mostly involved me ranting, didn't it? The parking meter fireworks.
Yes. Independence Day.
Michael in the rain outside the window, not going away.
Yes. Sexual healing.
The red shoes and the Dalmatian. Michael's recapitulation of them.
Yes. Crazy.
That's where we get the group standing in the not quite Foursquare thingamy, isn't it? Out by the quarry.
Yes, it is.
I think I picked that.
Okay, good enough. Tess lies in videotape.
Tess's playful reconstruction of the statue for the camera.
Yes. Foursquare.
Well, I was going to say the sugar cubes, but I actually think it's Michael and Isabel with the child in the swing.
Oh, yeah.
That's always what I come back to with that one for some reason.
Fair enough, yeah. Max to the max.
The House of Mirrors stuff, I think? Valenti's sudden realization?
Yes. The White Room.
Isabel dreamwalking Max. I love what we do with the camera.
Yes. And Destiny.
I think it's Kyle's healing, actually.
Right, okay. Good enough. Yeah, quite a lot of stuff has gone on.
Definitely.
And yes, so we did get a really nice voicemail from friend of the show, Paul Mackey, who we've played stuff from before. Did you get a chance to listen to that one?
I did, yeah.
So I kind of thought it was good since he did this very nice plot recap of the season. We can put it in there, and he was then throwing it over to us to explain what it all means.
Yes. Well, we do exist to pull the stuff to pieces.
Yep. And we did say that we were looking for theme and meaning here, so...
Yes.
All right. So, first here's Paul.
Hey guys, Paul Mackey from IGCast here, and I wanted to chip in on the end of Season 1. Season 1 does a great job of starting out with an interesting premise and then ratcheting it up from there. Our three favorite alien invaders start out, we may presume, at a position where they feel they have a lot to be paranoid about, but everything is in enough of a stasis they've developed relatively normal family lives. Then the inciting incident, the gunplay at the crashdown, sets everything in motion. They have to deal with normal human beings learning the truth in a widening circle of friends. They have the local sheriff nosing into their business, at least in part due to his father's past. The federal government is involved, but initially, at least, the agents investigating still don't seem too sinister. I mean, how sinister is Julie Benz, really? Darla aside. And it cranks up some more. They learn more of their own past and the past of other human allies and adversaries. The end of the season brings in a fourth human alien, and Nacedo, a full-on original vintage alien from the crash. They're soon on the run from the most unhinged worst of the U.S. government forces, and Max is captured. Now they see that all the paranoid fears they entertained before the crash-down shooting were far from unfounded. In the end, they have Valenti as an unlikely ally, Nacedo, who may not be trusted not to kill every human that is an obstacle, and Michael, who fears that he is that same way. And after a whole season running from all the threat from inside human Earth, we get a tease that there might be worse threats yet on the way from outside. What does it all mean? Well, that's your job. You're doing a bang-up job so far on the podcast. I'm looking forward to getting into Season 2, especially the back half, after I stopped watching to try to participate with you. I'm not sure, once again, if it's appropriate to say, but I'll sign off the IGCast way with a hearty, happy hunting.
Right. So I think that my thesis for the season is kind of in two stages. We have these alienated outsiders, or people who are becoming alienated as they meet and get to know the true aliens, all coming together, becoming stronger together, and protecting each other against Pierce, who seems very symbolic of a closed-minded establishment. He has made up his mind about aliens before he has ever met any of them, and he cannot be talked out of his interpretation.
Yeah, he has this sort of idea that one alien is like every other alien, so because something dire happened to his particular mentor, all aliens will be destructive of everybody's mentors, special unit or not.
Yeah. Yes, which is metonymic or something, that the one is necessarily representative of the whole.
Yeah. And you can't have studied them that much, I suppose, aliens, because as we see as we go, I mean, even down to their powers, we get very different things from all of them this season.
Yes. Yes. As Paul pointed out, we do kind of have that threat on a slow burn throughout the entire season. Valenti is embodying it more than anybody else at the very beginning, and then we have Topolsky, and then Topolsky goes away and it's kind of on the back burner, but we still have this sense that things are going on in the FBI, that someone is still looking for them. And then finally it becomes very, very serious right at the end.
Yes, we do this very interesting shifting and escalating of antagonists.
Right.
And we start with Valenti, who, I mean, he definitely wants answers, but I'm not sure he necessarily wants more than that. We don't have a sense, really, of what he would do if he caught an alien.
Right.
But I don't think he's the type that would take them into a white room and perform any number of atrocities. It's not the sense I get.
No, definitely not this version of Valenti. Calling out Roswell High, partly because there's one of the books sitting on the desk right in front of me. But Jim Valenti in the books is that character. He is the Pierce analog. And so he is very definitely the cruel and... yeah.
Interesting. So we sort of split him in two for the purposes of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, or kind of carve out this other space for him to inhabit and leave the other version of him for Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely carve out a very interesting space. They interact in a really interesting way until ultimately we have, obviously, Jim as cavalry.
Yeah, it's probably our most dynamic character arc out of all of the main cast.
I would say so.
Is foreshadowed, I think, by those two very early episodes in the pilot where they get him to think twice, basically by casting Kyle in the role of the mysterious alien and having him catch his own son.
Yeah.
And then in Monsters with Maria saying, you know, Isabella's special because she comes from a good family. It's a good family that needs someone like you looking out for them.
Yes. And then sort of occupying that middle ground, we have Topolsky, who changes coats and colours as many times as we need her to.
Right. Yes.
And, it proves you can't really tread that line sanity intact, apparently.
No, it seems not. Not with people.
If you can, you get victimized for it, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there are so many great moments for Jim through the seasons. There's definitely the convention where he does actually kill to protect Max, and then lies to keep the full truth from coming out, which is something obviously that he doesn't do lightly. He's somebody for whom integrity is, I think I can tell, important, even though we've never got that laid out in dialogue or anything.
But, we haven't had to. It's built so nicely into his character that I think if anyone tried to say it outright, we'd be rolling our eyes and going, oh, really? We do know that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of the sheriff's badge, isn't it?
Don't need to tell it. Yes. Yeah. And then kind of his somewhat rougher ride through the back half of the season where he's really not sure what he can believe in, where kind of the black and the white are the right and the wrong.
No, well, he starts to take over that space that Topolsky left. It's almost like it's magnetic. He slides more and more into that grey, ambiguous area where he's on the side of the law, but the law isn't right in this case.
Yeah.
It's gone underground and it's doing all sorts, and he can't have that.
Or at least that that the spirit of the law can't be enforced.
Yes, that's it.
That.
Yeah,
yes.
He can't obey it to the letter, but he's got to preserve it the way he sees best.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Okay, so should we go through with character arcs for some of our other...
Well, yeah, we have got protagonists here, haven't we?
Yes, we do.
Much as we love Jim.
Yes. So, possibly start with Liz, since she kind of was the one who was most innocent in the beginning and then had the most crashing into her very safe and predictable world.
Yes, well, she's got this ongoing tension between Liz the scientist and Liz the emotive human being, really, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think she does. Though, usually she manages to integrate those fairly well, I think.
She does, but I feel, to some extent, like it's the shooting that first brings those really into contact, or into sharp focus, maybe.
Yes.
I mean, she's never had questions she can't answer before, and then Max heals her, and suddenly the laws of science do not apply.
Yeah, except, I think to a certain extent, again, a lot of the deep laws of science are the ones that she is following. A scientist is an observer first. She has observed what has happened to her, and she has to believe that.
Yes, and I think that's what enables her to believe, isn't it? Faster and more readily than, say, Maria or Alex.
Yeah, scientist sees first and then tries to explain, but never stops themselves from seeing what they don't expect. I think that was Douglas Adams who phrased it fairly close to that, anyway.
It's a good line, yeah.
Yes.
And I'll forever love her sort of slowly trying to get to the root of that truth, and supposing, as Max is pointing upward, oh, so you're from up north then? And just quietly deciding they're all Canadians.
Yes.
And only eventually getting to, well, no, in that case, really, you must be from elsewhere completely. Must be aliens.
Yes. And kind of, as soon as she's come to terms with that, she is looking for the deeper answers to Max's alien story that even he doesn't have more than hints of at the beginning. She's asking all the questions about kind of what they looked like when they were born, and the
logistics of it.
How they got to be with their parents, and...
yeah, you were born in 1947, you're 16, how does that work?
Yes. And that's what makes her insist on tagging along to Marathon, Texas, and to go find Riverdog and all of the various places that she's been over this year.
Yes, just right up until the pod chamber at the very end.
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent that is almost what leads to her heartbreak, in that kind of she's been looking for the answers, and then she gets what she thinks is the answer, that Max isn't her soulmate after all, that he belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, and can't see the nuance of it, or maybe doesn't want to.
Right.
But I mean, it's interesting too,
Yes.
because it's Liz initially that says of Tess, she frightens me, she feels alien.
Right.
I can't remember exactly what she says, but that's approximately it, because Max has a moment of
Yeah.
going, well, yeah, so am I. Yeah, but what if
Right.
Tess is evil? You know,
Yes.
the other alien.
Yes. And I think that this only occurred to me now, but that bit at the very end of season 1, that is the only time that they showed any of the humans the pod chamber, right? So far?
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, because we haven't had Maria,
Yeah.
or, no, Michael's definitely an alien, Alex
Yes.
in there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they've kind of been mostly too busy running around ever since Tess showed it to Max.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's been one great chase for the back half of not the back half, but the last few episodes, definitely.
The last 3 episodes, yeah.
And poor Alex, we keep forgetting he has a part to play. And, plots that could borrow him.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think that kind of covers Liz's arc, and Max's is quieter in a lot of ways. He's definitely had his world changed just as much by Liz's crashing into it as Liz's was changed. He, in a lot of ways, is still the boy who's hiding behind the tree.
Yes. Although he does have moments, like I think Blind Date, for all its sins,
Yes.
brings him out of that space a bit.
Yeah, and he's becoming more confident and assured within the group, definitely.
Yes.
Kind of that moment again at the end with Nasado where he asked, well, if you're not here to lead us, then who is?
And they
kind of
all
silently has the moment where the realization hit him.
Yeah, well, and everybody realizes it. They all just, to a man, turn to him.
Yeah.
And we've been building to that all season, I think.
We have, yes. And yeah, he's definitely shown a lot of leadership, especially in the last few episodes. His very nice little St. Crispin's Day speech in Destiny, where no, we are not running and we are not letting them take us apart. We are going to fight back.
Yeah, and he's had versions of that all through the season, as early as the pilot, where he talks about if they want lives, they're in Roswell, but
Yes.
That's really the crystallization of
Yes.
why they need to stay.
Yes.
And he talks them into it, even Michael, who wants to go off and explode things all the time, always.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not being fair to Michael. We'll get to that.
Yeah. And there's kind of the flip side of it in Max to the Max, where it's, no, Liz is in danger. I'm not going to stand by and let Nasado play out whatever plan he's got. We're bringing her back safely.
Yes, and yet in a funny way, that's, part of the same coin.
Right.
It's just that for once Max is more in the Michael role and charging ahead. But he's definitely leading them, and they're going with him on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of a question of where...
I mean, except for Tess, who thinks this is a really terrible idea that might actually get us killed.
But she does come along.
You're right, yeah.
Though sometimes I think that she would follow just about wherever Max leads, but anyway.
It's entirely possible.
Right. So, should we look at Michael next?
Why not?
Since he definitely, I think, was the most alienated, the most cast in the outsider role at the very beginning. He didn't even have kind of the safe family home life that Max and Isabel did.
No, and yet, interestingly, in casting him completely on his own in Independence Day, we start to give him more security and forward movement
Right.
than we have quite a lot of the other characters at that point in the season arc.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the moment where he does reach out to this community that's around him. He asks for help, and that gives him more independence. Yes, that's a good way of looking at it.
Which, yeah, I suppose ties back to what we were talking about, the power of community all through this season as a
Right.
theme that we keep coming back to and circling.
Yes. And since that transitional moment, he, keeps trying to make a go of it out of his relationship with Maria, although things keep getting in the way.
They do, and I think that's one of those rare moments where he's really very honest with her and sees that actually the world doesn't end when that happens.
Right.
It turns around and actually turns around in his favour.
Yes, though he hasn't quite clued into that for the last time when he's struggling with, admittedly, the horrible implications of having killed Pierce.
Yes, but it's interesting what he does there is he lets her go because he's trying to be protective. It's not that he thinks he can't have her in his life, it's that he thinks she'd be better without him.
Yes,
Whereas
that's definitely a more mature outlook than we've had from him before.
Definitely. I mean, he bolts from the Evanses because he just... it's the Monopoly game of doom, let's face it. This isn't for me. This will never work. I cannot do people.
Right.
And Maria's sort of, I don't know, the solution to that in a way.
Whereas Isabel kind of has this almost dovetailing arc in that she is seen, happily with this community of friends and not quite dates hanging around her at the beginning. And she moves away from all of that, but it's kind of because she starts to realize that they don't matter as much as this found family that will stick by her no matter what.
Yes, we're starting to shift what we mean by community and that idea that you don't need hundreds of really good friends or even hundreds of people to nod to. You just need 2 or 3 people round the table to talk to when you need them there most.
Right.
And that can be enough.
Yes. Very much living up to the idea of friends are the ones you call when you need to move. Good friends are the ones you call when you need to move a body.
Yeah. Yes. But I think also, too, partly that idea, to jump shows completely here, I think it's Cordelia Chase says in Buffy, that idea that you can be alone and surrounded by dozens of people, and she feels alone all the time.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I mean, there's an argument that you see a bit of that at the beginning with Isabel, but you certainly lose the friends fast enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I did like that moment in Leaving Normal where she is getting mocked by her friends for helping Maria out, and it's like, will you guys just chill out?
Yes.
And a big part of that, of course, is her relationship with Alex, which, again, is really not settled at this point, even though they did have that one nice moment at the end of, or close to the end of Destiny.
They get lots of nice almost moments.
Yeah. But she can't seem to hold him close without pushing him away every now and then.
No, but I think that's classic Isabel. It's funny. We sort of feel, I feel like we leave Michael in a more settled place, even as he's letting go Maria, than we do Isabel and Alex.
Right.
Because the number of times we bring them together to then hold them at arm's length throughout season 1 is quite a lot.
It is.
I mean, it was happening back in Heatwave, and again when he turned up with that book. That I can't remember the rest of that scene except that we did not want the book.
Right.
And yet in between we have these really lovely moments.
Yeah. And then kind of the bit where he was tucking her into bed after having cheeseburgers together at the crash down, and she goes to sleep and has another dream of Michael.
Yeah. And
probably courtesy Tess.
Even just down to Alex's response, when she says, all right, I will jump into this, and we can have a proper relationship. And Alex is going, but romance and pacing and timing and flowers and lovely things that we're supposed to feature in this. Don't they happen?
Yes. Yes. And the fact that he's even willing to help her and stand by her when he thinks that she's having an alien baby.
Yes, the fact that he's just quietly accepted off screen somewhere that, weird things were definitely going to happen when he signed on.
Yeah. So, I guess we should talk about Maria and Alex and their own arcs rather than just kind of the role they play.
Conglomerate with other people, yes.
Yes. So yeah, Maria, I think definitely stepping out from the shadow of being Liz's sidekick and developing her own confidence has been a big part of it. She was talking about how in the pilot how she was going to be Liz's wacky friend when Liz was famous, and she can't be the wacky friend if Liz was believing in aliens.
Yes, I can't be your wacky friend if you're already wacky.
Yes.
No,
yeah, but I think that she's kind of let go a lot of that wackiness and become kind of this... She has, I think, at least part of the emotional heart of the group as we end season 1.
She does.
With Alex probably being the other.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And, I mean, especially because it's often Maria that is the glue that holds these two sides together.
Right.
We've seen her before now take the alien side over the human in votes, and she's often oddly the voice of reason, actually, when they're in conflict.
Yeah, the
who says
the common sense that no one else can see.
Yes, her willingness to see both sides.
Yes. Which I think is actually something that she inherits from her mom, that unexpected wisdom and normalcy.
Yes. Which, you don't expect when you first meet either of the Toluca women, and yet they do quietly just espouse genius in places.
Yep. And Alex, of course, at the start was basically defined as being the one who was left out of the secret.
Yes.
And,
I mean, yeah, we talked a bit about that and how that didn't really seem to serve much purpose, except that they still needed an outsider.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think that kind of the way that we see him catching up to the secret on his own pace is really quite delightful in the way that he approaches all of these relationships that have already been settled a little bit by the time he's getting into them.
Yes. Right down to that moment where he's saying to Liz as they leave prison, well, I believe that you believe all that.
Yes.
And I'm glad you told me, even if I'm not really sure where I come down on it.
Right. Yeah, and really he hasn't bonded that closely with either Max or Michael, which is something that stands out a little bit to me, that they possibly Max and Michael's bromance is already so tight that there really isn't room for a third wheel in it at this point.
I think he just doesn't know how, because Alex is so demonstrative, and when he tries bonding with Michael over the camera about how I'm really glad I can do this thing for you because I know this stuff, and Michael just doesn't know what to do. What planet does Alex come from there? Yeah,
I think kind of we get the sense that he is somebody who is more comfortable relating to girls and women, even though he has the Y chromosome of his own.
Yes. I'd be intrigued, and not to spoil what doesn't happen, we never do see this Alex's home life.
No.
We get that glimpse of him and his father being completely clueless about camping. But aside from that, I don't really remember seeing anything else.
Yeah, there are references to his mother, but not really in any way that show us much about their relationship.
No, and I sort of like to think if we did see it, they'd probably be so normal as to out-normal the Evanses.
Quite possibly, yes.
Which takes doing, let's face it.
Yes, I just love that one appearance of Alex's father and kind of how much he lives the absent-minded professor trope, at least, as I could see.
He really does. But it's also so terribly obvious that Alex just, in the way people sometimes do in the throes of school, oh, by the way, Mum, Dad, this thing is happening tomorrow. I meant to tell you.
Right.
We should be involved. With our sleeping bags or our cookie trays for the bake sale or whatever the event.
Yep. And that leaves Kyle, who really doesn't have a completed arc of any sort at this point. We kind of have him starting off as kind of the nice guy who's just, trying to make a good impression.
He's very like a dog, as Maria so aptly says.
Yes. Yeah. And then kind of the various stages of suspicious and interfering Kyle.
Yes. And then I don't think we get much of him again until he's drunk, do we?
No.
Drunk, well-intentioned Kyle?
Yes. Who does bounce just delightfully off of really drunk Max.
Yes. Kyle playing Emma Woodhouse may be one of my favourite things through that season. And then, he kind of goes on the back burner again until we feel the need to shoot at him.
Yes, well, he's being suspicious and interfering again, and then kind of brought back, and completely unsure what to make of that, and we'll pick that up again in a few episodes' time.
Yes. Watch out for Kyle's arc, it's coming.
It is. But, so I think kind of, as we went through character arcs, we've really talked a lot about the three big relationships of the show also.
I think we have.
And really, to be fair, we've talked about those enough during the individual episodes.
I think so. I think we've done these pretty comprehensively by now.
Right. Okay, and we also had a much shorter voicemail coming in from Christelle, who was talking about the powers and the power specialties of the various aliens, with some interesting speculation. So here's Christelle.
I'm hoping there are no spoilers here. We've seen that healing is Max's power and Isabel dreamwalks. So far the others can't, but I'm not sure if they mentioned it later. Also, we've seen Tess with some kind of special ability, even though they haven't talked about it much yet. But Michael, does he have something only he can do? Would it have anything to do with what they find out about themselves and who they really are?
Yeah, did you get a chance to listen to that one?
I did, yeah.
Right, yes. So yeah, there's not too much there. We've got Max and Isabel very obviously have their specialties of healing and the dream walking or mental contact, which have been very much explored kind of at the end of the season.
Yes.
And Tess, although we haven't named it or really explored its limits, it's fairly clear from her demonstration in the White Room that she can make people see and hear things that aren't actually happening.
Yes. Michael, we're less clear on.
Yeah, there are suggestions that he kind of has the offensive specialty fitting in his role with the warrior and is the one who is
yes,
possibly the only one other than Nasedo who could actually do the
the magic fingerprint trick. Yeah.
Yes. Handprint of Death Strike.
Handprint of Death Strike, yes. Although, interestingly, and we're never going to see this again either, back in Riverdog, we did temporarily allow Michael a bit of an ability to heal.
Yes.
Back when Riverdog twists his ankle.
Yeah, that was Into the Woods, I think, actually.
No, you're right, that was Into the Woods.
Yes. And it was also mentioned in Independence Day as... or no, that was the one where he did ask Max to heal him because he couldn't do it himself.
Yes, and at that point we didn't know if that just meant aliens couldn't heal themselves and could only heal each other or what.
Right.
But
yes.
We seem to be shifting ever so slightly towards this idea that healing might be Max's particular mark on the universe.
Yeah, and even back in Leaving Normal, Michael asks Max, why don't you heal yourself? And Max says, because the jocks will notice if it doesn't heal naturally.
Yeah.
So that's suggesting that he could if it weren't for the visibility concerns.
Yes.
Which actually makes me wonder if it could be like Max healing himself and then Michael and Isabel doing a good makeup job on him so he looks like he has a black eye.
That would have been a wonderful comic relief scene. I don't know where we'd have fit it, but...
Okay.
I always do find it interesting, though. I don't know how much we do with this later, and it's probably something more to talk about in Season 2, but that both Isabel and Tess are distinguished not by anything physical they can do, but by their alien powers seem to be mentally based. They do things to people's minds, or they can inhabit them.
Yeah, Yeah, which seems kind of a almost stereotypical and patriarchal masculine-feminine split there.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. I'd be intrigued by the alien engineering logic when they were doing this divide.
Though, of course, I would not necessarily want to get on the bad side of the Roswellian ladies with their mental powers.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Definitely,
I stand by what I said when we met Isabel's dreamwalking power. It's terrifyingly invasive.
Yes.
Very cool trick, but I'd really rather not.
Yes. Yeah, and one thing actually that if we pull together this suggestion of the four of them having had past lives on the alien planet, and kind of what we were talking about in the White Room episode about, oh, your powers aren't alien, they're just the limits of human potential, which I don't think either of us put too much stock in. But it brings up the notion of, did their past selves have the same power specialties? Was King Zan a healer and Princess Valandra a dreamwalker?
Oh, see, that's interesting. Because I suppose if you wanted them to survive the second time through, you would slightly alter the original, wouldn't you?
You might, if you thought that you could come up with a version that
was better, yeah.
Yeah, clearly their original power set didn't save them from getting killed before. So
definitely not. And I would think if part of them this time is going to be human hybrid, then you'd need some kind of security feature.
Yes. Yeah, so it also actually reminds me of something which was mentioned a couple times in the Roswell fandom about engineering and camouflage and fitting in, which was wondering if they were designed to be physically attractive by human standards.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. Because you wouldn't think so logically if your whole plan was hinging on reuniting your alien couples from before.
Right.
But then they'd have to be sufficiently so that the human parts of them responded to each other.
Right.
No, I hadn't really thought about that before.
Yeah, I think it kind of does make a certain ruthless sense just in terms of, humans often being more likely to trust a stranger if they're that kind of thing.
No, I think you're right. And by and large, they seem to have worked on the premise of they might as well do all things well if they're going to be a mix of human and alien, although they did sort of leave out the grappling with emotions, but then that's very human.
Yeah. And of course, aside from Nasedo, we don't really know kind of what the emotional
range, understanding,
life of aliens is like. Yes. Though from the hints about kind of this war and enslavement and all of this, it might suggest that they have heightened emotions and
well, they definitely have heightened empathy. We've talked a lot about that.
Right.
So it would make sense if everything else had the potential to be magnified too.
Right. Yes.
Particularly if you think in terms of Max and Liz's relationship, which always feels semi-operatic.
Yes. Okay, I think that's probably as far as we should go with that for future spoilers.
I think that's as far as we can safely tread.
Okay. So let's see. Should we go and talk about the opening credits for Season 1 and what it tells us?
Well, we've been threatening to do that for a while, so why not?
Yes. Okay. So I have gone through them in fairly minute detail and made notes, so I can go through and say what I'm making of these, and you can jump in with any thoughts that you have.
Sounds good.
If that works, all right?
I do not have detailed notes, so this is a good system.
Yes. So we start with kind of the headlines and newspaper articles about the crash, which are a good way of kind of setting the stage. And silhouettes of Max and then Michael and Isabel beside him walking through the desert. Very nicely evocative and kind of builds up that outsider theme or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a landscape we recur to a lot, so it obviously develops importance as we go, but I think you're right, the vastness of it compared to them.
Yes. Yes, and then we start to get into kind of one of the visual themes that is repeated probably 4 or 5 times throughout the not very long credit sequence of Max approaching the crashdown from the outside, and outside is the desert instead of the Roswell City street. And Liz sees him, and they're both looking at each other through the window. So that kind of, to me, speaks powerfully of their contact coming from these separate worlds. And we do a lot kind of visually with their reflections through the window as they're looking at each other, and kind of the images beginning to overlap and coincide.
And cohere a bit. I mean, it's interesting. I think it does very elegantly grapple with this idea that we've talked a lot about, this idea of alien as metaphor for outsider or a refugee or what have you, but this idea certainly that everybody at that age feels they're on the outside of normal.
Yeah. And I kind of liked the idea of Max and Liz each seeing a reflection of themselves in the other.
Yes.
Which makes me wonder exactly kind of what Max sees in Liz, if it's kind of, the life that he could have had if he hadn't been born alien.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment, and certainly what Liz sees in Max.
Right.
Because, it's definitely not just answers to scientific questions she hadn't thought up.
Yeah, I think there's hints from that first conversation back in the morning after that she was looking for this more exciting and more inexplicable world than the everyday one that she was surrounded by.
Yes, which I think is partly her interest in science. She's always trying to find new truths to go beyond what she knows, and Max suddenly hands her literally a whole other world.
Yeah, and what she talked about, kind of about being in the spotlight of everyone noticing if she has her hair cut, and kind of Max being the one person who people don't notice even when he's right in front of their eyes, or don't notice as much.
Yes, that's it too, isn't it? I mean, I'd forgotten that conversation, but you're right. He craves her anonymity, and she wants... Or, sorry, the other way around. Yeah. She wants the anonymity, and he wants a bit more notice.
Yes. So, we have a couple of images coming from the show in quick succession. The Atherton photo of the dead body with a handprint on it. Liz showing Max her handprint, so kind of the death and life symbolism that we have talked about before.
Yes.
And that moment of Max pointing up in the air to try to explain to Liz where he came from.
Yes, which somehow manages to become, I think for a lot of people, iconic of the show.
Yeah. And I think Liz... I'm not sure if Liz repeats the gesture. She kind of uses a lot of the same terms.
She does.
Trying to explain
she
to
repeats
Alex.
it to Alex, and he just isn't getting it. And he makes Liz's mistake about the Canadians.
Yes.
We are, as people know, famed for our handprints of healing.
Yes. Or just from the fact that we're way up high on the map.
Pretty much.
And when Shiri and Jason get their credits, we have kind of Liz staring at Max after he's healed her, and Max running out of the diner, which is a great, again, little symmetric moment. Each of them have had their worlds crashed into each other, and they're kind of struggling to react.
Yes. Max's world is potentially ending. Liz is definitely starting up again.
Yes. And for Katherine Heigl's credit, we have 2 shots of Isabel from Monsters. One in the crashdown after she teased Maria with a line from her dream, and then standing out next to the road in the desert, which I think kind of suggests how Isabel was vulnerable in that moment and needed Maria's help.
Yes, and I think also the way we're trying to move Isabel towards integration with this very particular community.
Yes. And for Mahandra's credit, we have her in her Crash Festival costume from the pilot, which immediately made me think both of the moment where Liz told her the secret.
Yes.
And how she helped the aliens by letting Isabel pretend to hit her with the car and starting off the whole chase that would lead Valenti to Kyle.
Yes, and I think encapsulating, too, Maria's initial response to aliens and her conception of them.
Right.
And, speaking so much of that line about, well, how can I be your wacky friend if you're already,
Right.
Maria's starting place in the story, as it were.
Yep. So I have another few quick visuals. Valenti slamming Max up when he found him at the Crash Festival, the kind of "do you have any rights" line.
Yes.
And the three of them watching as the wooden aliens crash and burn.
Yes, and we manage, in the course of the credit sequence, to evoke the awfulness of that crash, which always feels like a gut punch whenever I see it. Endless rewatches. And the very authoritarian stance we first give to Valenti.
Yes.
And Valenti, I suppose, the credit sequence, really every, not outsider, but every authority figure they have the potential to encounter.
Right, yes. So then we have Brendan's credit and Michael looking in through the crashed down window door, which I think makes him seem more of an outsider than Max, which is very apropos.
Well, definitely. He's in that liminal space between two worlds. He's not part of the crashed down community. He's not quite... Well, he hasn't got the family Isabel and Max have. He's on his own.
Yes. Yet he doesn't even have Liz staring at him as Max does.
Yes, exactly.
And another quick shot from the pilot of the three of them walking together, coming out of the Jeep to confront Liz and Maria after the little chase through the streets.
Yes.
And Colin Hanks's credit... Or sorry, was there something...
No. You go on.
Okay. So Colin Hanks's credit was him rushing to look at the alien symbols because Isabel mentioned that he was staring at her, which is such an adorable moment.
It is.
And for Nick Weschler's credit, Kyle just kind of looks generally suspicious, which I think fits fairly well.
It does. I mean, most of what we ask Kyle to do this season is be suspicious.
Yes. And there's a quick shot of Max and Liz running through the desert from a car in the night, which is something that we do have evoked in the Destiny episode. I believe that it was also something that they just shot Shiri and Jason doing for a TV commercial very early in the season without any notion of where it would actually fit into the plot of the show, but just kind of knowing that that was the emotional impact that they wanted to have.
Yes. It's an interesting thought. I mean, it's an exercise that works quite well, I think.
Yeah. And for William Sadler's credit, we again have him as the enemy figure threatening Max at the Crash Festival.
Yes. Well, I mean, we could hardly spoil it, I suppose, by revealing how we end with him.
Yes. And so all of the credit sequence up until that point, up until the very last shot, was the same throughout the entire season. Through possibly the first 2/3, it ended with Liz on her own, kind of the moment where she's staring after Max after he's run off, and she can't follow him because the crowd of enthusiastic Crash Festival patrons in their costumes got in her way.
Yes.
And at some point, presumably around Crazy, it was finished with the moment of the six of them together up at the quarry trying to decide what to do about Topolsky.
Yes, I think that's where we first noticed it, isn't it? And it's an interesting one because we've suddenly, like, by that point in the show, we definitely have more of a sense of how they fit together as a group.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of...
Nice how the evolution of the credits kind of takes that from Liz alone to
Liz and
the
community.
family surrounding her. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, to surrounding all of them, I suppose.
Yes, they've all come together in that moment. And so, yeah, I did think it was interesting that there was never any additions throughout the season one credit after that we never have Emily DeRaven as Tess, even though, well, she's not a regular until season 2 starts, but there's no hint of her in the credits at this point yet.
No, which almost adds to our sense of not really knowing Tess. But
yeah,
I'm not sure that was the design. I think that's just me giving them potentially more credit than was
Right.
than was intended.
Yeah. So I think that has covered a lot of the big things on my to discuss list.
And mine, I think.
Okay. There's some rather interesting things that came in when I put the call out for things to discuss in season 1 that I'm not entirely sure what to do with, including speculation about what would have happened if Grandma Claudia had been able to stick around for several episodes before she died.
Well, it's a great fan fiction theory. Someone could always write it and send it to us.
Yes. And possible parallels between Nasado and the Native American legends about shapeshifters, skinwalkers, that kind of thing.
Oh, see, that's interesting, but I don't know enough about it to speak to it.
Yeah, I think that from what little I know, skinwalkers are generally thought of as very evil, sometimes as spirits, either of the dead or of kind of perversions of the land itself, and sometimes as people who have trafficked in forbidden knowledge to get the ability to change into a coyote or a wolf or what have you.
Yes, and we sort of toy with some of that when we still have those very obvious shots of the pills that Nasado takes.
Yes.
But then we stop with those.
We do. We also stop being so coy about cutting away when he's shape-shifting so much.
Yeah, we figure out a gimmick that works so that they can mostly shoot that in front of us.
Yes. We're able to scrape up a decent morphing special effect.
Yeah, it does what it needs to.
Yep. Yeah, probably borrowed the one that they used for Odo on Deep Space Nine and added some glowing to it.
Yes, well, if we've learned anything about aliens, it's that they're glowy.
Yes.
This season.
Yes. And one bit which I thought was interesting, though it's a little bit more kind of behind the scenes and how the sausage is made than we generally get about the show here. But Paul Mackey also sent me a link to the interview,
podcast.
Yeah. Yes. With Shiri Appleby, where she was talking about first her rocky history with the WB network since she had shot a pilot the year before Roswell for kind of this movie stars family sitcom as the oldest daughter, and had been replaced when the series went into production by, I think, Marnette Patterson, and how she kind of very much distrusted the network and was uncertain even after Roswell had been picked up, and that when the network executives were asking her to go on to a bunch of late night talk shows and promote the show and kind of encouraging her to come up with this persona that they felt would, or come up with a persona that would reflect on the show well, she basically went back and said that she didn't feel comfortable with that she was still trying to come up with a grip on her own personality and didn't think it would be healthy to be affecting a persona in that way. And in the interview with the podcast, she hinted that was part of the reason why Tessa's character got more prominent, because Emily DeRaven was willing to do those talk shows.
Yeah. Which, it's all really interesting.
Yeah. But kind of, for one thing, it's only one person's perspective on something that is probably very complicated.
Almost certainly, yeah.
And again, kind of, I guess in a reflection of death of the author, we can't necessarily put too much weight on behind-the-scenes explanations of why things in the show are the way they are. We need to take...
You have to take all of it.
We need to figure out why the show as it is means what the show means as it is.
Yes, it really has to stand on its own, I think, dissociated from that stuff. Interesting as it is.
Yeah. I, to a certain extent, never really thought that they were using the character of Tess to replace Liz. It was just kind of
No, I mean, that would account
setting
for...
up someone interesting for her to contrast against, certainly.
She's a great foil to Liz. I mean, if people were feeling she was replacing Liz, I can suddenly understand the massive backlash Tess got, but I actually always liked her from the start.
Yeah.
Liked her as Tess, not as Liz Mark II, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I think to a certain extent I was always fascinated by her and what she represented, especially in this terms of kind of humans and aliens coming together and becoming stronger by understanding each other. Mostly because she was so
she's so different, yeah,
in several ways that I wanted to see her finally come to terms with that in a contrasting way to the way Michael had over season 1.
Yes, that would have been the obvious point of comparison. It's sort of a shame they don't pick it up, but they do get sort of there eventually. They do interesting things with her later.
In a way, yes.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. Spoilers, of course.
Yes, spoilers. Things we will not now talk about.
Yes. But, yeah, and I do remember kind of in the hiatus after season 1, kind of not wanting Max and Liz to be together just because of past lives, but also I think wanting them to really explore what that meant to their characters and what it would mean to Max's relationship with Liz. And I don't really think that we ever got that in a satisfactory way either.
No, because even when Max was saying, no, it's not safe, we can't be together, and breaking them up repeatedly throughout the early part of the season, we never really went back to exploring what that could mean, or how they were separately, besides the not coping.
And yes. And that, I think, is my big issue with Max and Liz throughout the season, and kind of one of my biggest issues with the season as a whole, that we have kind of the whole thing in the balance with Liz getting made to stand in the corner, and Max using that as an excuse for his fears, saying that, no, I can't blame you for your fears, we have to be apart until we figure this out, when it's, no, you're the one who's
which is code for I am terrified of what's going to happen, so I am backing away swiftly.
Yes. And we never really get that resolved in a satisfying way. We kind of have hints of it, of Liz challenging him into the woods, which is a great moment.
It is.
And Max, under the influence of alcohol, being completely fearless, and Liz being the one who has to be afraid on his behalf in Blind Date, and then Max not even having the courage to admit that he remembers it.
No, I know.
And then there's kind of this interrupted attempted reconciliation in Independence Day, where Liz is trying several times to actually talk to Max about what happened and never gets to it. And then in Sexual Healing, it's, the constellations have aligned and we're both feeling hot to trot, so we don't need to discuss what was keeping us apart.
Yeah, well, quite. And I think I've always had a theory that it's trying to do something with that idea that all high school relationships feel that way. But it would have been nice to give it that extra depth and let them change dance partners, as it were, for a couple of episodes, or just explore what that meant to be alone, separately.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have done, I think, a really nice version of that in Sexual Healing, kind of as is, with just, possibly trying to steal a few moments out of the Michael Maria and I guess it was just the Michael Maria subplot there. But of Liz, feeling as drawn to Max as Max was to her, but, doing her best to draw a line in the sand and saying, no, Max, come on, this is crazy. We have all of this stuff that you insisted we needed to figure out before we were together again. Figure it out.
That would have been good. Yeah, we're not always good at having these two communicate the things they really need to.
Okay, and I think that is probably as good a point as any to end season 1 on.
I think so.
Okay, if you agree or disagree with us, you can get in touch on Twitter @AliensCast or by email illegalalienscast@gmail.com. Send in audio voicemail files for us. We will play them.
Or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/alienscast or visit our blog at alienscast.com. Weigh in on the forums yourself. We're on TuneIn, Stitcher, and Google Play Podcasts, so you can listen to us there if you like.
If you've enjoyed the podcast so far, please link to us on your blog, Twitter, Facebook, wherever else you are on the internet. You can leave us a review on iTunes, help other Roswellians find us. Our theme music is Epic Trailer Intro by Honey Lemon.
This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Find out more by searching for Creative Commons. I'm Claire.
I'm Chris, and this is Illegal Aliens, a Roswell podcast. We will be back on Monday, October 30th, with a special episode looking at a kind of spin-off of Roswell the two of the stars are trying to get made, Baron and Toluca.
And after that, we'll be on hiatus for the month of November on account of National Novel Writing Month.
Yes, I have been inspired by all of this podcasting about Roswell. I have a novel idea I want to write about an Earth woman who wakes up in an alien city with no memories of how she got there, and so she has to help solve the mystery of her own abduction.
And anyone who remembers me rambling on about Smiley at the beginning will be totally unsurprised that I'm wandering off to Cold War Montreal.
Nice.
For a month to try and get stuff written about it. But set a reminder for Monday, December 4th, when we start Season 2 with episodes Skin and Bones.
In which Michael loses a pocket knife and Liz takes a political internship, assuming that she's actually going to get a salary.